Good afternoon, and welcome to the Momentum Mindset Show, where we're talking everything personal development, coaching, health, and the law. I'm your host, Jay, here with co-host Janine.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Please join us on Facebook, where we can be found at the Momentum Mindset Show. And if you want to call in and be part of the show, we would love to hear from you. It's 888-565-1470. And if being on live radio is not your thing, no problem. Send us your comments and we will interact with you on Facebook.
Let's create some momentum. Mindset Show. Happy Friday.
And happy holidays to everybody who just experienced Christmas. I am your co-host, Janine.
And we have a very, very special guest today, Michael DeSanti. He's a personal development trainer, one of my heroes, actually, in the transformational community, because, as a matter of fact, he co-trained my first personal development training. Welcome to the show. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Thanks.
And congratulations, because I know you just got married.
That's right. Yeah, we're about 4 weeks in. And it's been spectacular.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I asked Michael how he wanted to be introduced, and he said very determinedly, author, trainer, and life coach. So I wanted to ask him about if that had any significance whatsoever, if that's what's on your heart the most.
I think right now, I've written some children's books, and also I just wrote a new book for men called Emerging. And right now, so because that's my newest endeavor, that's how I'm associating now to really focus on building that endeavor.
That's fantastic.
And my life coach is actually my oldest endeavor, so I guess that's kind of taken the backseat to those three.
How long have you been doing life coaching now?
I started in 2010, so I'm coming 10 years is when I started my coaching company.
And how did you get into that?
I first started it because I was really passionate about nutrition and lifestyle, meditation, stress release, and things like that. So I was in a job, I was in a career that I was super stressed out about. In my 20s, I was doing corporate events for large companies and traveling the world. On paper, at first, it was awesome. I got to travel the world on somebody else's dime, staying in the Ritz-Carlton, eating steak dinners every night. So as a 20-something-year-old, as a 20-something-year-old, I struck it. I struck it big. But as I got older, I was growing companies, getting more responsibility. I was passionate about it.
Okay.
And as I left, or as I was leaving, I started to really focus on my health and mindset, lifestyle, and I was like, I loved being in that conversation. I loved coaching people to it. So I walked away from my career that I was actually being groomed to take the company over.
Oh my gosh.
And I left it. I just took it.
I love that. And I think that's what it takes is to make that choice. That tomorrow's not going to look like that.
Right.
There's
that saying, leave in the net
say,
will
whatever
hear.
I'm doing right now is just not serving me, and I'm willing to take on a challenge. Now, at the time that you made this choice, I mean, did you have a family, and what was going on in your life at the time?
At the time, I was, like in my 20s, I don't really come from much money, and so, but in my 20s, I was making money, and I, owned my own home and drove a Mercedes, and I hit it. I was vice president of this company by 27.
Wow.
Right.
And I had all of that, but what I was really clear about is this is not working.
Okay.
I was totally unfulfilled.
Yeah.
So I slowly started to build a bridge into coaching. And then one day, I didn't have a family, luckily, and I had all this stuff, but none of it was fulfilling. And I just slowly built this bridge until one day I said, I know this isn't working, and the pain of hanging out here is too costly. Right. So I built this bridge, and then eventually it became, all right, now the next step is you need to really take a jump. But luckily, I was so determined, I was so committed to making it work that I every day, I would just press forward.
Well,
And
that's
then
really
the
what
next
it
thing you know,
takes, right? We talk a lot about entrepreneurship, and I told you that that's one of the things. So it sounds, that fits like a glove as well, because not only the coaching, but also the business aspect of it, the entrepreneurship of it, and really sort of making a go of it after having been sort of, it sounds like, nestled in the arms of something that was a machine that was already working.
Right.
And you were an employee, and to be that versus your own generator.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, though, is like I was making money in my 20s, but I was spending it too.
Oh, yeah,
so when I
yeah.
left my company, I didn't have a dollar. My brothers used to call me Mr. 111 because my bank account got down to $1.11. And I was like, wait a second, like this is a
I've seen
huge
that movie
leap.
before.
This is a huge leap.
I'm just saying.
I've been hitting 111 for a while.
Yeah. It's not unfamiliar.
It wasn't like I had this big nest egg. I was like, oh, now I'm in a position to take a risk. Like it was pretty much make this happen or else. And
Right.
so I just took a huge leap.
Yeah, I feel like
To give you like a bit of background also about like what we've been doing here for the last year, and we just celebrated our year.
Oh, congrats. Congratulations.
And this show started, well, I began my journey of transformation in that personal development program called Gratitude Training here in Pompano in February 2017.
Yeah.
And you were a trainer in training, I believe, at the time. And I think the second night of that program, and I've written about it and I talk about it on the show, when I heard that all events are neutral, and that was the greatest news I ever heard and the worst news I ever heard. And all of a
Right.
sudden, in 1 second, I'm like accountable for everything, and it's like, wait a second, which is great, because then the trainer at the time, his name was Barry, he told me that it's never too late to have a happy childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
from that space, I began to look at my entire life from the context of creation.
Yeah.
And from there, we just I know Janine started a month after
Yes.
after I did
Mhm.
in the same
Absolutely.
program, in gratitude training.
And right around that time, excuse me, Jay, I had also left a very cushy,
Oh,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
warm embrace
Yeah.
of a position and a steady paycheck. So, yeah, something about the
I
leap
also
of
ended
faith.
a career too, a long term of destroying my body and stuff like that.
Yeah, there were a lot of changes happening, that's
yeah.
true.
And so for the last year and a half, really, I've been on a journey of intentional transformation. And what's shown up for me is things like this radio show. I also have been writing a journal on Facebook, and it's all to show our listeners, our viewers, that you can create the life that you want, beginning with the life that you have. It's all about becoming intentional and all of the tools of transformation. I want to get into that. In the next segment of our show is the tools of transformation. I think that there's fundamental tools called distinctions that allow us to have a new world open up to us, and give us the perspective and possibility to be able to create the world that we want to live into. But it's been, just to give you a little bit of props as well, it's like these are your results. I mean, in part from the work that you do, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Had I not gone to this program, and I tell this story like this. When I went to law school, I got a book after my first year of law school. I did well during my first year of law school, but I got a book called Getting to Maybe, How to Write a Law School Exam. After I got that book, I don't get anything less than a B+ in law school, and I did very well. I ended up in the top of my class, and I did very well because I had that book. And this type of work, when I talk about transformational work and personal development, is that book.
Right.
For me.
It's sort of, I would equate transformational work to oh, I get it now. I didn't know that. Oh, that's a different perspective. I didn't realize I could see it that way, or I didn't. It opens up your mind. It's sort of like learning a new language.
It's exactly learning a new language.
Yeah,
it is.
it opens up an entire other universe that you didn't even know. So I joke with Jay every now and then, because one of the tenets is, that everything is neutral and there's no bad and wrong and blame and shame, and every now and then I miss blame and shame very much.
I would say I was on my way here and I hit every single traffic light, and I was thinking about
who'd you want to blame?
No, I was thinking about like that someone was conspiring, and because all of that,
that's your favorite.
All that junk, shows up. You're looking at your GPS, you're like you go, you trace back to your day, and you're like, oh, it's me. And again, it's the greatest news you ever had, and it's like the worst news you ever had.
It is. Yeah. I tell people that all the time. The good news is that it's up to you. The bad news is that it's up to you. Because again, we're carrying that programming all the time, or the way that we were raised, and all of the limiting beliefs that we had, that we don't even know we have them. Because when you hear your whole life, money doesn't grow on trees, and then somebody tells you, well, why do you believe that? What? What do you mean?
It challenges your whole paradigm.
It challenges everything.
What is the when did you begin this journey? When did you find your book, so to speak? When did your aha moment come?
Oh, geez, that's a loaded question. I think for me, I have what I call them river changers, because it's almost like the river of your life is moving one way, and then all of a sudden it just distinctly shifts. And certain things, books or moments, events or people, they are part of that.
Right.
And I think a big one for me was, I was an athlete growing up, and then I got injured, and my parents got a divorce, and my oldest brother moved out, all within about a week and a half of each other.
Oh, wow.
And so I was an athlete, and I always associated with that, and that was my identity. And then when I couldn't play basketball or baseball, I ended up reading a lot. I was laid up one summer, and I started to read, but I was really reading like the Tao Te Ching and ancient spiritual texts, and I was like 14 years old.
Wow.
And I was just really drawn to it. And little by little, I started to notice, like, wow, there's a whole other world out there. And I started to get into transformation when I was young. But then as I got older, some of these limiting beliefs or conversations around money and relationships, those were two big ones for me, that I had patterns in, but I didn't realize it.
Yeah, sure.
And I always knew that there was this other world that I really loved exploring, of the mind and of the spirit and of growing character. But I got caught up in making money in my 20s, but I became really, really unfulfilled.
Right.
Then I was married and was getting a divorce. And one of my brothers, Christopher, who you know,
Yes.
he and my mother took this course together that you were speaking of, gratitude. And they did it together, and it transformed the relationship. They were growing up, they were like cats and dogs. If my mom said something was black, my brother said it was white. And then I came down to visit them here in Florida, and I was like, why are you two so nice to each other? And they were like, we did this work, we did this program, and we really started to recognize our participation in our relationship. And the skeptic in me was like, oh, that'll wear off. And year after year after year, it wasn't wearing off. It was actually getting better and deeper, and they were getting more and more connected. And then after my father died, and I was getting a divorce all in the same year, my brother and mother were like, hey, why don't you come down and do this work?
Right.
And I came down, and the moment I sat there on Thursday, I remember thinking, this is everything I've ever been about, all in one place. And I knew pretty close, or pretty quickly, that this was the work that I wanted to do. I wanted to become a trainer. I wanted to be on the stage, and I don't like public speaking. So I had to overcome all these limitations because I was so drawn to doing this kind of impactful work. So there's a lot of conversations and limitations I needed to really recognize and overcome.
I want to get into these limiting beliefs here in a second. We're going to take a quick break and run our only commercial, which is our commercial. Listen, we're business owners. This show is really about entrepreneurship as well, and what we've gone through in the last year to develop and transform the law practice that we're running, and running through all the conversations that come up week after week after week. So we will be right back after this message.
Farrow Law Firm, standing up to corporate bullies, using innovative, aggressive, and effective strategies to resolve disputes effectively and timely. Contact us at 954-252-9818, online at farrowlawfirm.com, and on Facebook at Farrow Law Firm. We look forward to being of service to you.
You've been listening to the Momentum Mindset Show
with Jay and Janine. Give us a call at 888-565-1470. And now back to the show.
And welcome back to the Momentum Mindset Show. I'm your host, Jay Farrow.
And I am your co-host, Janine Davis.
And we're here with special guest, Michael DeSanti. And welcome back one more time. And we were talking a little bit about your journey getting to become who you've become, a master trainer, a life coach, author, and the journey that got you to sit in your first chair, so to speak, of a transformational program, and what happened to you that night. Now, I'm curious about, from that chair, what did you do to get busy, becoming involved in this work?
I think what got me into that chair, going back just a few moments of that, what got me into that chair was there was a lot of things that weren't working.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the clarity of results. I was getting divorced. I was making money but not saving it. So there was a lot of things that weren't working.
Right.
I like that. Like you earned your chair somehow, some way.
Here's the thing: is you were talking a bit about like accountability. Nobody's forced to be in that chair.
Right.
Unconsciously or consciously, everyone's choosing to be in that chair because certain things are working about their lives and certain things aren't.
Right.
And the things that aren't, we're pretty much blind to. And they're in our blind spots, and we need community, and we need growth and learning to illuminate that.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, it got very clear that I couldn't hide from my results. I couldn't hide from a divorce. I couldn't hide from being broke. And I spent a lot of my life hiding from it.
Yeah.
And even as we've done the show, and as much work that I've done, and the feedback on Facebook, one person said, "Oh, dude, you're transformed." And I said to myself, I'm looking at my results. I mean, I have things that are working, certainly, and then I have the same things that are still a challenge. I mean, this thing with the bank account, and it hits home. It's like, okay, that's a result. Now I see everything else that we're building, and I see it, but it's also an operating system. Like there's a context and content. It's like how I'm being, and I'm maybe getting a little ahead of the conversation, but is generating certain results.
And you've practiced that operating system for a long, long time. And I think part of when people say like, "Oh, you're transformed and you're doing all this work," you got to understand you've been operating a particular way for decades.
Right.
So sitting in a workshop for 4 days or 9 days or going through, it'll illuminate those operating systems. Then you have a choice to create new ones. But you have to understand how familiar those old ones are. They're not only familiar, they're also seductive.
Right.
They're there's an attraction to
like
them.
blaming. It feels good. Like there's something about it.
Stop lying. It feels good. We're not.
Really
We don't get to this point where, I'm enlightened past it. But it feels good for a moment. But then what happens is you become aware of, you know what? This is also hurting a larger part of my life. So therefore, I choose not to do it.
I've heard this before. Like, the seminar didn't fix the person. And it's like, it's like. It's the beginning of a process.
4 days compared to 40 years is a really challenging ratio.
But my thing is that, also people don't need to be fixed. They get to be illuminated, and then they get to choose.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important to sort of dispel this thing that anybody needs fixing, because that's also very limiting, I think. And if you look at it from that perspective, how far can you really get in that mindset too? Because that in itself is a limiting mindset.
Well, it implies brokenness.
Right.
So the moment I need to be fixed, it implies that I myself am broken, or there's a part of me that's broken.
Right.
Broken.
Or there's something wrong.
Broken and not working aren't the same thing.
Okay.
Right.
And cracked and destroyed and rubbished is not the same thing as something I'm just simply ineffective in this area of my life.
Correct.
In relationships and in finances, I was ineffective. I'm not broken, nor was I broken. I wasn't aware of certain tools that I had, and I also chose certain tools that weren't working. And I would do it over and over and over again because I had a lot of this old programming.
And again.
I had a lot of old programming that I grew up, and money was always tight, and lights were always being turned off. And so I thought, you had to work really hard, and if you didn't, and you weren't making money, money was hard to come by. So I lived that way. It was what I was taught.
I think that I don't want to say all of us, but I think a lot of us have this thing that money is hard to come by. It's hard to get it,
It's hard
and
work.
now the what you have right now in the space of personal development too is that you have these really big business guys who are like grind, harder, go.
But the guys are selling success.
Yes, and it's very, but they also collapse a little bit of personal transformation in there as well. So I think that it can be a little confusing to people, but it's more
There's
of the
a
same
lot of
messaging. It's
charlatans
more
that-
of lack consciousness.
Yeah, and then once you get it,
not
you'll be
enoughness.
happy,
Right.
and once you get it, or once you triple or quadruple or 10x your income, somehow you're going to be fulfilled.
When you're in this seminar, there's something that's going on, well, at least with me, that it's like, oh, that all makes sense. I got this figured out.
Yeah.
And at the end, there's this, I'm walking out the door and I'm literally on fire. And then Tuesday comes around. And then Wednesday comes around, and it's like, wait a second. And that's when all of the other things show up.
Right, you've called it the
The
personal
hangover,
development hangover.
If you look it out, and it's like, wait, what happened to all the magic? And it's like, okay, then they'll take another seminar. Someone called it the other day. We're in a workshop. She said, well, I'm a collector of workshops. Okay. And-
Right, because she was going to them in the hopes that one of them would fix her.
Yeah, but that very
Right,
language and
exactly.
context already implies broken.
Now,
Exactly.
Rather than I'm here to illuminate a part of me that I'm finding ineffective
Right.
based on results.
Right.
I keep saying what I want is prosperity, and I keep saying that I'm broke. And so something is ineffective. It's either in the way, something's either in the way,
Right.
or something I get to add to my process or operating system.
Right.
So something is either in the way of my operating, or what I call your inner world. When those could be narratives, they could be perspectives, they could be points of view, that are simply not working. Or there's something that I'm not accessing that I get to access, like perseverance or determination or focus or commitment, that I get to take to another level. But
now,
that's really
everything
it.
that you said makes sense to me. And some of our listeners are out there like, okay, well,
Yeah.
it sounds kind of advanced. I'm thinking, well, one of the reasons why we did this show and what we realized was the gap that we realized is that some people do believe that the seminar is going to fix them, and it really requires ongoing practice of everything that you just said, shifting your way of being, clearing energies, being your word. All of that practice then is where the results ultimately
Yeah,
are
because
found.
you're undoing 40-odd years, or however
Sure.
many years,
Yeah.
of operating in one single way, and now you're being asked or educated, or I don't even know the right word, but you're being shown that there are a myriad of possibilities for you.
Well, I think there's a sequence to it, and I think this is where maybe that seminar hangover comes in, or that collector of certificates, and there's a process to it, and the first process is awareness, because you can't shift or transform or change anything you're unaware of. So if it's in a blind spot and you don't see it, you're unconscious to it. So the first thing is shedding light on it and really giving it awareness. But the challenge with awareness is you get a high from it. Think of like an aha moment. Nobody ever regrets an aha moment. It's not like, oh, I wish I didn't see how illuminating that was.
Right,
Nobody ever regrets an aha moment. But awareness is only a portion of it. Because awareness without committed action into a new operating system won't work. It's just simply, it's illuminating, you get a quick high from it, and then you just go back to what you used
Right.
to do.
I don't know if you necessarily go back, because like my parents did the trainings, and even today my parents talk about it, they quote it. I think that it shifts your DNA. I think it does something to a neural pathway, that it opens something up that never closes, but it does erode. Like it has its effect that won't go away.
Sure.
But just like anything else, unless it's practiced, in your estimation, like what is then after awareness? Like,
After awareness is committed action.
Okay.
So awareness without committed action is just a theory. It's just a concept until a committed action is taken. So committed action or commitment generates in the unknown. So that means as you are moving into the unknown, you're creating something new. You're creating a new operating system, a new habit, a new way of thinking, a new way of languaging, a new way that's distinct from the old way.
So are you mindful of habits, routines, everything else? You identify once you have the awareness. Is there a way to take inventory about the way that you operate in order to be mindful of what would support you, what wouldn't support you?
Yeah, the inventory is results. You're having it happen or you're not. And being neutral about it, honest about it, rather than judgmental about it, which is the thing we're taught, because we're so identified with results that I am what I create, or I am my results, or I am my bank account, or I am my status, I am my title. We're so over-identified with it, rather than, okay, this is what I keep saying I desire and want. Am I having it happen or not? And if I'm not, what's getting in the way? And if I'm not, or if I am, what's working about it?
Right.
That's why awareness around debriefing things is so important, saying, okay, this is what I said I was going to do, I did it, what worked?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times I think the challenge is that people get stuck in, all right, well, now I'm committed, and now I'm just committed to committing.
Right.
The next
Extra
thi-
committed to
now I'm
committing.
just like
I've heard this lately.
I'm just now committed to overwhelming myself.
Right.
The goal of committed action finally is embodiment, where it's simply who I am and the way that I operate. So if you break this down into something practical, if you take like a professional athlete, it took them a long time to develop a skill. But if you give Serena Williams a tennis racket, she doesn't even have to think about it.
Right.
It's part of her automatic.
It's actually an extension of who she is. She's now embodied it.
Correct.
And that's the level of mastery, when the way you operate, it's just simply you're operating based on what it is that you desire and want.
And I'll tell you,
Yeah.
the level of frustration that goes down. For me, last January, something happened. Like there was a switch that went off, I would say, because I was operating here where I was frustrated with myself. I can't play life. All these things. I am the results. And then all of a sudden, I went from about it, like this thing that was running in my head. You're not good enough. You're not this enough. Not that. Whatever. Went from less 85, 90 down to about a 15 to 25, and it stayed that way. And I do get frustrated, and I do going over here, like wanted to be on time. Had that been like a year ago,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would have been just like this and blah, 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 and screaming and throwing cell phones and everything else. And now it's like, oh, okay, I get it. But I
got it.
still have to tell myself that, hey, I'm not.
I'm sorry,
I'm
was
not,
that just a year ago?
But it pops
No,
up.
but it does. It does. Your human pops up. It comes. It just, no matter how, it
Right.
just happens.
So we're going to take another quick break, but I want to talk about this awareness. I want to talk about what would illuminate awareness, and a couple of the things are these distinctions that are found in some of the personal development seminars that you train, and some others.
And I would like to say, I would like you to speak into, from the awareness into the embodiment.
Got it.
Right. We'll be we'll be right back after this message from the Farrow Law Firm.
Farrow Law Firm, standing up to corporate bullies, using innovative, aggressive, and effective strategies to resolve disputes effectively and timely. Contact us at 954-252-9818, online at farrowlawfirm.com, and on Facebook at Farrow Law Firm. We look forward to being of service to you.
You've been listening to the Momentum Mindset Show.
With Jay and Janine, give us a call at 888-565-1470. And now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Momentum Mindset Show. This is the last show of the year. I want to wish everybody a happy
Happy
2020.
and healthy New Year.
And we're here with special guest Michael DeSanti, who is a personal development trainer, author, and life coach. And we are going into a new decade. And we were talking about awareness, and think, what is that? Like, if someone's looking to create some new goals for themselves and a new life for themselves, so the first step is awareness. And I think that there's a couple of distinctions that open up awareness. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about like a distinction of personal development, like, You know, what is something like the fact interpretation or the victim accountable? I think those are two very large ones.
Well, I think at the root of all of the distinctions that we do in the training and the workshop that we're talking about, at the root of all of the distinctions is that you have a choice in the experience of your life. That's the root of all awareness.
Please say that again,
That-
because that is really big, and I think most people don't believe that.
Well,
so this is why I think it's so magical.
we're conditioned to think that you're a victim to life, or you're conditioned to think that life is happening at you or to you, and the best you could do is really ride it.
Yes.
Like the best you could do is just
Roll with the
passive-
punches.
yeah, roll with the
Isn't that what you
punches.
used to
and-
think?
Right.
That's what I used to think, and I'm pretty Pollyanna. I used to think it too.
or yeah, let me just make the best of what I've
Yeah.
been.
If life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
But really, when you look at perspectives, when you look at moods and attitudes, and you look at context and your inner world and the framework of your mindset or the framework of your own awareness, really what it comes down to is you either have a choice in the creation of your life or you don't. And really everything that we do in that training is take different angles to the point, not to the fact, not to the truth. They're all perspectives. And the reason we say that, like, I say it all the time to my students, don't believe a word that comes out of my mouth, but don't believe a word that comes out of yours either. Because I'm not here, I have no monopoly on the truth. All I'm inviting you to is a perspective.
Yes.
And the perspective is that you have a choice in the experience of your life. And that's a perspective that has power. Because here's the thing is there's people that have been, let's say, quote unquote, attained, accomplished, or given everything in life, and they're miserable.
Yeah.
There's also people, I've spent time in India and North Africa and countries where they have comparatively way less than we do.
Yeah.
And I saw the light of happiness in their eyes. So it's not a matter of what do I have or what have I been given or what's my status. It's a matter really of the perspective of do I have a choice in how I experience this phenomena of life.
And today, for instance, like we were moving, and I had the thought that this sucks, and then I thought to myself, I know that I have the choice to make this the best day of my life, and to say, wow, what a new opportunity! I get to move into a brand new place. I get to live a brand new life, a new lifestyle. That's the choice that I have. Now, living into that choice is, because your human comes out as a little bit difficult,
Yeah.
but I, at least from this work, know that I have that choice as to my experience of whatever scenario that there is.
Yeah.
And even there was a book from a guy that was in the Holocaust that talks about this. They could take everything away from me.
Victor Frankl.
Yes,
Yeah.
except for
Man,
my
search for meaning.
my
Yeah.
choice of the experience of the situation.
If you think of that, if Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning, he was forced into the most heinous human experience that we could probably even
Absolutely.
comprehend.
Right.
And he experienced grace and God and forgiveness and life and illumination from it. So it was his perspective, his choice that generates, and that's what we forget, is that our perspective is connected to our experience.
Absolutely.
That our choice in life is connected to the experience that we have. And I could take moving as a misfortune, or I could take moving as a new opportunity and possibility.
Yeah.
I could take 2020 as, oh my God, the decades are flying by, or I could take 2020 as, here's a whole new
Right, I'm
So
gonna own
good.
it. I'm gonna own this.
Absolutely.
that's
yeah.
why one of the distinctions and perspectives we have in the training is that events are neutral.
Yeah.
They mean what I say they mean.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that have had the same thing has happened to two different people, and they've had two totally different outcomes from
Absolutely. Well, since the training, one of my curiosities is the way I realize that it has created a different perspective in the way I think. I no longer accept common truths as truth. I really question, well, is that true for me? I don't really think that. And it sets another standard of curiosity
Sure.
about going and perspective. I really want to know, Yeah, I don't buy into that. And if I look back, I've never been a buyer into it.
But here's the thing about that. There's a value in distinguishing beliefs from truths. So gravity is a truth, meaning I don't need any buy-in into knowing that if I jump off a building, gravity's going to take over. I don't need to believe in it. It's a natural law. But what we do is we make our beliefs truths, and they're not truths. Beliefs are more like superstitions.
Yep.
Now, the good thing about superstitions is they may be true or they may not. But when a belief becomes a superstition rather than a truth, let me back up. The moment a belief is a truth, I'll fight to make it right.
Yeah.
Even my limiting beliefs, even my limitations, even all the things I say I can't do, I'll fight to be right about it the moment a belief is truth. But the moment a belief is a superstition, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Now it evokes curiosity.
Yeah.
Now I can explore it. I could question it. I could challenge it. I could keep it.
Yeah.
I could say, you know what, that doesn't work for me. But the moment a belief is a truth, you're now locked into it, and you'll just simply operate as though that's true.
I think that then shifting that, I can listen to this logically and say, you know what, this makes total sense. I don't want those beliefs anymore that don't serve me. Let's just get rid of them. And then we were talking about this thing about called embodiment, right? So
Yes.
getting to the level of embodiment, that requires what? I mean, in your estimation, I mean, you just made a great analogy about the tennis player, about Serena Williams, about it becomes she's practice. Where can one go to do that? What is something that would support them, and is it something that you work with people to do?
As a platform, yes. I'm a trainer and author. I coach men one-on-one. I have a retreat company. So I have platforms that we explore all that. But breaking it down into simply a personal level, awareness to commitment, here's the thing is we have to stop lying as though, like, once I'm aware of it, I'm just going to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the jump from awareness to
That's
commitment,
it. That's
That's
it. That's
big.
huge.
That's
you're
it.
not.
That
You're
is
not going to
big.
just do it. And here's the other thing: we must be honest about with ourselves. From awareness to commitment requires taking a risk, and that's where people stop.
Yeah.
People think, oh, now that I see it, it's just going to naturally happen. No, it's not. It's never going to happen without your courage to take a risk and do something new and generate something new into the unknown. But we have this relationship with the unknown that it's scary, but that's simply a narrative or a belief system.
Right.
Now, as you start to practice taking risks, and when I say risks, I don't mean recklessness or anything destructive.
Right.
I mean taking emotional risks. I mean taking risks of being wrong, risks of not looking good all the time or having all my together. Those are all risks.
Yeah.
And moving from awareness to commitment requires a risk. So we have to actually stop lying to ourselves that, oh, it's just gonna be like Moses parting the Red Sea.
Like the consequence or the pay of the tab for a risk comes almost immediately. It's, in other words, you have the awareness. It all sounds good. I've never remember walking out of the seminar. I'm going to treat my dad like just with total respect and love. We're going to get each other, and I just know how to fix him. I know how to fix myself. And then and then he said something to me, and it was one of those darts that only my dad would know how to do. And to his credit, Dad, you're night and day. I mean, our relationship is gone, to close to like a 9.5 right now because we've worked at it with the awareness. But when that risk came up, I'm like, I'm not going to tell him that I love him. I'm not going to hug him. I mean, that's the tab for the risk comes right away, and that's when people say, oh, wait a second.
But here's the thing, and this is again around awareness, is that we don't escape the law of cause and effect. So yes, we let's say analyze the cost-benefit analysis of taking this risk, and I'm not going to tell him I love him because then I'll be emotionally, open or vulnerable. And this, that. But here's what we don't analyze: we don't analyze what's the cost of doing nothing, and that's actually where the majority of our pain comes in.
Now, how do you create that pain? Because I think that you need to feel something. That's my experience, and that's my truth. But I've noticed that when I feel pain, I move.
Well, discomfort sparks action. That's just the way we are. If you're sitting here for long enough, you're with your legs crossed. Eventually, if you're uncomfortable, you're going to move them. Discomfort sparks action. Now, one of one of the challenges of that is that if that becomes my operating system, I'm going to put myself in pain. I'm going to put myself up against the wall. I'm going to procrastinate everything. And instead of doing the things that I know I could or should be doing, I'll just put myself in a tough situation, and then I know I'll produce. But here's physiologically, you're inducing hormones and cortisol, and you get a high from it. Don't kid yourself. But there's also a crash to it. And there's also all of this time I wasted, and there's all of this. So first I've got to notice the pattern of pain and self-sabotage that I put myself in. Now that a new narrative, it becomes, wait, I could create all of this without pressure. I could create all of this without pain. I could create all of this because this is what I actually want, rather than when I'm in a tough spot, now I'll go and produce something.
I have that, and many professionals that I know do in my field of being a lawyer, is that they'll just like wait till the last second, deadlines coming up, and then I'll just spend the night before doing it, and then we congratulate ourselves. Look how smart I am. I did this in 4 hours. I had 4 months to do it, but I got it done. Look how I'm brilliant. And then I don't have to do anything for a little while. But I see that.
A lot of the work that I do, especially with men, is initially, I always say, one of the first tasks is you've got to stop lying. You've got to stop lying. Now, most people have lies. Here's how most people have lies. People have lies as like a deliberate misleading. Like, Jay, the gold is this way when I know it's that way. That's not how most people lie. I mean, sociopaths lie that way all the time, but that's not how most people lie.
Yeah.
Most people lie with omissions and inflations, meaning that when I speak to you, I'm going to omit certain things so you hear it the way I want you to hear it.
Right.
And most people lie in the other way is, let me inflate it. Let me make it sound grander than it really is. And this way I get to pat myself on the back for it, and this way I get to tell myself how great I am that I pulled this off. It's a lie. And in that lie, we keep fooling ourselves, and our cleverness overtakes us, rather than when I say, what is it that you want? And being direct about it without lies, and being really truthful and taking the risk to be honest. And that's where actually the majority of growth happens, because it's awareness, it's risk, it's commitment, and you practice it long enough, you begin to master it and embody it.
Right.
What you said is so powerful, because it's like the Mr. Miyagi thing. It's like people think that I'm going to set a goal to make $1 million is how I'm going to transform my life. When in fact, stop lying, or be your word. I think be
Stop
your word,
lying.
or stop lying. And I think that's a really accurate way to describe how we do lie. The inflation or the
And omission.
Right.
Because it's so subtle.
And I do that in when in my sales and my practice and this and that. It's like and my results and what I say and what I do, and it affects. It's funny. It's like I don't think that it affects the rest of my life, but it does.
It does. It bleeds into everything.
And that stuff, I may look, and I say, I don't know if you know this part of my story, but like 3 years ago, I literally walked out of a hospital bed after being in a coma for 5 days, and that became because I was lying to myself. I mean, over and over, lying to other people, and it was weird because I wasn't happy with who I am.
Sure.
And that was fundamentally, my unworthiness conversation, my not enough conversation, my I'm unlovable conversation put me there. And I may think that I'm out of that hospital bed now, but in fact, I mean, I've created my own limitations still because of that.
Yep.
And it seems so innocent and everything else, but it's so powerful to think about how much I do just that.
And if you think about taking the example you had on rushing to get here and hitting every red light, I can lie and say I have no participation in that. Or I could be honest and say, no, I left at this time and I overdid this and I said yes to this when I wanted to say no. And when I go back in time, I could add it all up. That I have participation in it. I chose this, I did this, I chose not to do that, I lied here, I omitted this, I inflated that, and next thing you know, I'm late. Or next thing you know, my bank account is gone. Or the next thing you know, my wife doesn't trust me. And we act as though we have no participation in it. But we do. We have ultimate participation in it.
And one of my deepest wants was to be an honorable, loving husband and father one day. And in order to create that, You know, that's the type of stuff. I mean, so when you say that to a man or in your men's group or to anybody else that you're coaching, I mean, how does that land and how successful?
Typically, it's like a missile to their motherboard. Because here's the thing, it illuminates our cleverness and our sneakiness. And a lot of times, I specialize in coaching men, but I could give the same guidance to women.
Yeah, I
but
would say that
we fool ourselves and trick ourselves into that we are telling the truth when we're not. And when I say that to them or invite them to that, it's really like a rocket right to their operating system, because there's nowhere to hide in it. And then the risk becomes being open and emotionally, and vulnerable and being honest. And we have that as a risk, but it's only a risk because we're not used to practicing it. We're so used to practicing lying.
Especially at the beginning. I mean, and I would think that if I'm practicing something like that, I'm going to ask the people in my circle for support. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different for a while.
Yeah.
And this might, and you're going to see parts of me that you maybe didn't see before. And I'm asking you to love me through it. I mean, something along those lines, because I would imagine that having a safe space, and that's another thing that we attempt to create here on the show for anybody that's listening. And we have people reach out to us on Facebook, and some of the stories that I've heard, that what we've created here, because we allow the safe space of, hey, look at us. We're
just going through it,
we're
just
gonna
like you
speak-
all.
I'm gonna
Trying
speak-
to figure it
we're going
out.
to speak from where we're at, where our business is at, where we're at personally.
Yeah.
Because, and we've done our best, but I noticed even in my best, I still want people to like me.
Yeah.
I now have conversations about the people that are watching this show that I have lawsuits against. And then I'm like thinking, well, why does it even matter? I mean, if I'm doing this and I'm speaking from where I'm at, and I'm willing to be this brutally honest, they should be afraid of me. I mean, but it's these conversations that creep up, you know, and I like the thought of coaching. And
I think it's invaluable to me. Coaching is invaluable.
Well, I think
as a tool,
I think
really
as a culture, I think if you look back on our culture, because I always say this to my students and my clients, that we're tribal by nature. We are, as a species, human beings, we're communal. We understand who we are in relationship with each other. And there's, generations ago, there were rites of passage, and there were moments where, okay, now, boys become men and women become girls become women, and there's these rites of passage. And now the best we have a coach in athletics, maybe a teacher in schools, and then you get older, and then you graduate college, if you're fortunate enough to get through college. And then it's just 22, have at it, you're out in the world, and now you've got to figure it out. And that level of mentorship is so key, and I would say it's actually probably most key as you're developing the platforms and purposes that you're doing in life and in business. And I think coaching it's invaluable because it's this guiding factor that keeps us protected. We're going to make mistakes, or we're going to make attempts and fall short, but to have mentorship is really, really key.
I agree, and I'm a coach as well, but I love being coached because I also, as a woman, I'm like, I believe these things about myself, and then my coach will say something, she'll make me reflect on, and I'm like, there's static on the line. I gotta go. And it's brilliant because I can't transform what I don't know.
Right.
And if I'm not willing to be 100% honest and really go there in that coaching session and really give it my all for my benefit, so I can grow, so I can get out of my own way or learn something that I need to learn or become aware of something that I didn't realize I was doing, or from acting like a victim and not aware of it, then I can never train, nothing ever, it's never going to be different. So I love that because coaching creates an incredibly safe space for people to be safe, being brutally honest with themselves, and having somebody in your life say, you are good enough anyway, and what do you want to do about it? It's all up to you. And I think that's one of the things that lights me up the most about being a coach.
And I'm hard on my coaches sometimes because they're spinning in their little lies, and I'm like, aw, really? You know, like, that's cute.
Yeah.
So what are we gonna, like, when are we gonna get to the real juice? Where's the brass
Well,
tacks here?
part of that, and we talk about this in the workshop and the training as well, is part of that is the ability to call out your own act,
Yeah.
to call out your own racket. Your act is your facade. It's the mask that you've worn to be liked, or to look powerful, or to look like you've got it all together. Or some people have like the shy act, the bratty act, the pissed off act. And we keep people at a distance that way. But a lot of the awareness that we do, that we illuminate, especially I think coaches illuminate, or communities illuminate, safe communities illuminate, is the ability, like, oh, I'm just in my act right now. I'm just running my act. I'm running my racket. And I get some pity for it and some attention for it. But that we get honest about, like, that's getting in the way of what I want, which is connection or authenticity or prosperity or, motivation, and it gets in the way. So we've got to be honest about that too. But that's a huge part of awareness, is the ability and the honesty to call out my own inauthenticity. There's a line in Transformation that says, the moment a human being is authentic about their inauthenticity, in that moment that human being is authentic again. That I could call out my own
like a
act.
rebirth.
Yeah, and it's a practice. Like, I call out my act of what you were talking about before, like, I'm the frustrated guy or pissed off guy or the guy that needs to be liked. I could see that of myself, and I could just interrupt it and call it
You
out.
mentioned something about when you were writing your books, and I want to talk about this for a second.
Yes.
That you I think you either had a coach or you called yourself out for the acts for the way that you were writing or the time that it was taking. Talk to me about a little bit about that and what have you written and where can we
please tell us
find
about your
the
book.
books?
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I've written 2 children's books. The first one I wrote was after I saw the Lorax by Dr. Seuss. I was 17.
Okay.
So I was in environmental science in high school, and there was a substitute, and he played the Lorax by Dr. Seuss. And it was the last period of the day. And I watched this cartoon, and I was so blown away by it that I went to the bookstore and I read every Dr. Seuss book on the shelf. And I went home and I wrote a children's book in a half hour about a boy that travels the world in search for happiness and then finds it in himself when he gets home. So the next day I go to school, and there's a girl that sits next to me, and I said, you have 2 younger sisters. I wrote this story yesterday after I saw that movie. See if they enjoy it. And she went home and she read it to her sisters. Her sisters loved it. And little did I know that the girl drew. She illustrated the entire book.
Oh, wow.
So 2 17-year-olds wrote a children's book in like 24 hours or 48 hours. But I had a narrative back then that said, if it came that easy, it's probably not worth it. So I took that book and I put it in a drawer for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And it sat there for 17 years. Then I did my gratitude training, and I illuminated a lot of my narratives. And I remember I left part 1 and part 2, and I went home back to New Jersey. I was living in New Jersey at the time. I took the book, the original copy, and I mailed it to a publisher in Pittsburgh and said, tell me what you think. And they published it in 6 weeks. But I was so clear because I saw where I was operating from, like this narrative around, I got to work hard for it.
Right.
Which had me wait 17 years to publish it.
Wow.
Then I wrote another children's book called Drop the Banana. And then I just wrote my book called New Man Emerging, which
So
is
tell us
based
about
on,
that, please. And how did you get into working with men? Exclusively, or do you also coach women?
I do coach women,
Oh,
but I
okay.
predominantly coach men. I think
Okay.
as I started my coaching practice in 2010, and that grew and grew, I started to notice there was a relatability that I had, and there was a way that I could be with men that I really resonated with, and I enjoyed, and I found that, okay, this is who I'm going to specialize in.
So, what the book that you have written for the emerging man, just we have a couple minutes
New
left.
Man Emerging.
New
yeah.
Man Emerging.
And that was that was one of those things where I woke up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't go back to sleep. And I went to my office in my house, and I started typing, went back to sleep. The next night it happened again, went back to sleep. The next night it happened again, and I woke up in the morning and I read what I wrote to my wife, or my fiance at the time. And I read it to her, and she said, "You need to write a book." And I was like, "I'm not writing a book. I'm too busy. I don't have time to write a book." And I said, okay. The moment I committed to writing a book, I committed to writing a book and thought, oh, I'll just do this every night. I'll go to sleep, and when inspiration happens, I'll just wake up and go to my office and type it. And the moment I committed to writing the book, all the inspiration dried up.
It's called New Emerging Man.
New Man
New
Emerging.
Man Emerging.
New Man
and
Emerging.
this is Michael DeSanti. And
Unfortunately, we're running out
our
of time.
But we'd like to
but
invite you
yes.
back for another time.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for doing the show.
You're
and,
most
and we
welcome.
really appreciate the work that
And
you do.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, everybody. And thank you to my
2020.
girlfriend who's in the
Epic.
studio.
Yes.
And Mitchell. he's with us.
Mitchell,
Thank you.
yes. The famous Boston
Happy New
Terrier.
Year, everybody.
Happy
and
New Year.
thank
New Year,
you
one
for
and
this
all.
year and for having us and listening. And we appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you next year.